to For the Road. Last week we had a look at the 64 Sprint GT and why it was pushing so much oil out the crankcase preload. Turned out that it had worn piston rings, and one of them was more than likely cracked. Now, even though I knew this, I kept driving it as my daily driver, and on Tuesday it finally pushed the spark plug out the top of the head. Now, that's unrelated to the rings, however, I'm taking it as a sign. For a while now I've been chasing my tail, repairing things here and there on the car as they went wrong, and because of that the car's never really been reliable. Now what I want is a car that I can get in, turn the key and drive it across a continent if I really want to. And that's how this car used to be. So the fact that it's not means it's really time for a rebuild. This is the start of what I'm calling the Sprint GT Spec 2 build. It's going to be the same car, the same color, the same character, but upgraded in a way that makes it more drivable, more usable, and most importantly, more reliable. Because what I really want is a car that I can drive. I don't see a point of having collectible cars sitting in a garage never being used. So this is the start of a new series on For the Road, the Sprint GT Spec 2 build. There'll be an episode at least once every 1 or 2 weeks until the car's done. So stay tuned and let's get started on this one. Right, so the way I'm planning to strip this car down is I'm going to work from the outside in, which means I'm going to start with all the little bits and pieces, little trim bits on the outside, and get the shell as bare as I can. Basically I'll take all those little bits and pieces and sort them into boxes, and I'll work out what can be fixed up here, what needs to be sent away for plating, so we can get everything back looking like this. And then when it comes to reassembly, everything's ready to go. So I'll do the exterior trim first, then move my way to into the interior, then pull the glass, start taking the electrical system out, and then pull the mechanicals, and the very last thing will be plumbing and suspension and brakes and all that. And then it should just be a bare shell like the GDV. And then they'll both go off to bodywork and paint. And yeah, and then we can start reassembling. But while it's away, I'd like to have all the trim off so I can start polishing, re-chroming, fixing up, replacing what needs to be replaced. So I was in here kind of late last night, getting off the exterior trim, and it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. The rust has really gotten to this car, and so if you don't know the story about this car, I think it might be a good time to explain it. When I was 22, I drove this car across Africa, and there it is in Sudan. And that journey, it ran really well on that trip. It never gave me any hassles. But that trip really took its toll on the car. And I spent about 3 months in northern Europe in the winter driving on roads that were covered in ice and salt and grit. And it's just made everything so rusty. I think Europe took more of a toll on the car than Africa did. You can see how all the nuts and bolts and everything are so badly corroded. That was perfectly plated when I left. You can see what all that bad European road salt's done to it. And I never understood why Europeans, took their cars off the road for the winter, but now I totally get it. You can see how everything's very, very dull and oxidized from that process. But it's made it very difficult to strip the car. The bumpers and everything are here. These are the original single-piece bumpers. And I actually had to cut the rear bumper off. I had to get a hacksaw in between here and the body of the car because the bolt that had gone in there was just rusted together completely. Yeah, it's really been quite difficult. So it's not coming apart as easily as I'd hoped it would. You can see this, this corrosion's all pretty bad. So I'm going to continue today to strip this thing down and file all the parts away so I can get them all restored. A lot of the stuff's going to have to go down to be professionally restored, electroplated and that. When this car goes back together, I'm definitely going to use stainless steel fasteners around the whole thing to prevent this from ever happening again. I think what I'm going to do now is try get the windscreen wiper mechanism out, some more stuff out of the engine bay, and start getting all this trim on the doors, glass, get that out. Right, I've got a lot of the trim stripped off of this car now. Most of it came apart relatively easily. However, the amount of rusted nuts and bolts and little things like that has actually made this process really, really tricky. Like these are the internals of the doors, the window mechanisms and all that. They just took to all that salt and ice and, European road salt so badly. And this is seized on here. That bolt, it's turning with its thread. And the bolt that holds this in the bottom, that's also broken and seized, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. Probably going to have to put a power tool on it and cut it off. Anyway, I've been at this all day and it's been fighting me all day, and I'm grubby and tired and getting a little bit frustrated with this. And it's when you're frustrated that you make mistakes, so I'm going to call it a day for this episode. Thanks for watching For the Road, thanks for following the Spec 2 build. Get back at this and strip this interior and the glass and start on the mechanicals pretty soon. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I'm Jethro James Bronner, and I put quite a lot of stuff up there, so check it out. This has been For the Road, and thank you for watching. There goes a sight from my soul.